Ethan, we're promoting Tyler, not you. You've been stuck in the same spot forever. And frankly, it's embarrassing, Victor Hawley snaps. The words like a hand across my face in the glass conference room, while Danielle Price snorts and Marcus Ling swivels his chair to watch the way my jaw tightens. People lean forward like it's a show. Someone drops a coffee cup in the hallway. And my daughter Maya stands framed in the doorway with a paper bag of fries in her hands, looking at me the way I have only seen her look at state fairs and team photos, thin and trusting and not yet heavy with the kind of disappointment that breaks into adulthood. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 38, and I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. I feel my throat close and the practice speech I had invented for this moment. The one that lays out 15 years in tidy bullet points, the one that names the nights I slept in the office chair, the 3 holidays I missed, the promotions I deferred because the project needed me, slips like paper through my fingers. Victor's voice softens for effect when he looks at Tyler Brooks, like he's petting a dog he trained to fetch good press, and Tyler smiles the empty smile of someone who learned that nodding evenly is more valuable than answers. Maya's hand lifts to the paper bag and then drops it. Fries scatter like bird bones across the tile. Someone laughs in the back, high and sharp. Another coughs and then forgets to be sympathetic. I notice the conference room clock, the cheap silver kind everyone has, and my fingers close around the pocket watch my father left me, the one with a hairline crack across its face and an engraving that reads "Time served," because I have kept it in my breast pocket like a prayer. I do not say anything. I stand up, and the room holds its breath the way it does when a pitcher stumbles on the mound. I move like a man who has rehearsed stillness and then afterward realizes there was no rehearsal for motion. I gather my coat, the scrape of fabric loud as a verdict, and I leave without announcing my resignation. I fold the watch into my palm and feel the weight of it, the cool metal pressing against the map of my life. The late nights, the client dinners where I drank black coffee until dawn, the fistful of business cards I carried like armor. I pass Maya in the doorway and she looks at me as if she might still be able to fix whatever has broken. I want to tell her that this isn't her fault, that the man in the gray suit at the head of the table is not the sum total of our family, but the sound people make when a favored horse is suddenly trotted out embarrasses me into silence. Victor follows me into the corridor and speaks in a polite, poisonous tone, the kind that smooths diagnoses. We need people who can adapt, Ethan. Tyler is our future. He says it loud enough for the receptionist to hear, for the janitor to glance up from his broom, for the world to think there is a moral arc bending toward Tyler's younger teeth. I keep walking. In the parking lot, a snow flurry deserts the sky. Early March with the smell of salt and exhaust thick on the air, and I sit in my truck with the engine off and look at the watch. The second hand skips where the crack runs like a fault in a map. The engraving looks less like a blessing and more like a brand. My hand goes to the radio, turns it on, and I listen to static for a long time until a classic rock song comes on, and I let the saxophone carry me away from the humiliation. I set the truck's heater to full, and I step out into the cold with the watch in my pocket, feeling its presence like a paycheck owed and then not paid. I walk toward the diner on the corner because when the world folds you up into a small piece you can carry, you go someplace that knows how to make coffee the way you need it, hot, bitter, and honest. The waitress at Ray's knows me. She gives me a nod that means I'm allowed to be a man who looks worn without being pitied. I slide into a booth, and for an hour I listen to strangers' conversations and watch the steam from their mugs, and my mind replays Victor's words like a tape loop. I taste the fries again in my mouth and the hollowness of a promotion that never came. I call my sister and tell her I quit. She starts an outrage and then drifts into worry about health insurance and mortgage. And I hang up before she can fill the silence with reasons to stay small. The pocket watch feels heavier when I think of the favors I cashed in for Victor, the weekends I gave up to save proposals, the nights I read numbers by the light of a monitor so that other people could sleep. I am loyal until the loyalty is used as a currency by other people's ambition, and that is the first sharp realization that slides like an ice pick into concentration. Loyalty is not a bank, it is a clock, and someone will either wind it for you or let it rust until the hands forget the shape of your time. I say the line to myself so I can hear it raw, and then I put the watch back in my pocket and decide two things. One, I will not scream at Victor in that fluorescent corridor like a man who has nothing left but fury on display. And two, I will not let this be the thing that defines the rest of my life. I start with a small step because all big things begin by picking up small ones. I rent a tiny office above a hardware store, lean desk and secondhand chair, a whiteboard with a scrawl of potential clients. Nights are the real work. Proposals typed until the dawn washes through the blinds, cold pizza boxes accumulating like small triumphs. I babysit my daughter less because I am building a thing for both of us, and the guilt of that hangs on me as tightly as the coat I wore out of the conference room. When I can, I pack Maya into the truck and we drive to state parks, to cheap motels with lumpy beds, to the Iowa roadside where the world smells like corn and gasoline. I teach her how to skip stones and not to be ashamed of silence. People from my old office become a rumor in my life, ghosts who used to stand in the same fluorescent light and joke about someone who never moved up. I use the jokes as fuel. There are nights I go without sleep, awake with the hum of a server in my skull, diagrams of systems in my head like constellations, planning how to make a company that pays its people and does not mistake loyalty for an unlimited resource. I hire a developer named Sarah Nguyen who codes like she carries lightning in her fingers. I hire a bookkeeper, Terrence Alvarez, who organizes numbers the way a surgeon organizes instruments. We work out of thrift and caffeine, from cheap conference rooms and diners, and slowly clients come because our work does not smell like desperation. It smells like competence. I watch my old company in the press. A puff piece about Victor's leadership, a photo of him at a ribbon cutting, his smile plasticky under the lights. He basks and I watch him bask and file away each photo like evidence. There are moments when I almost take a call from Danielle Price who wants to catch up, who asks if I miss boardroom meetings and if the free coffee here is as good as it used to be. I tell her I am fine and hang up. I start to build a reputation on two things, a refusal to overpromise and an insistence on the small details. My nights of sacrifice are invisible to the outside world. They are lit only by a desk lamp and the small glow of the watch in my pocket when I pull it out to check the time. The cracked face a quiet omen. I travel for business in the way people who are starting companies travel. Cheap flights, handshakes in 100 different cities, sweating through suit jackets in summer hotels. A trucker once said to me in a bar near Omaha, "You know a man by the way he pays his debt," and I put that in my pocket like a coin. It keeps company with the watch and the line about clocks and loyalty. We grow. Not skyrocket, but solid, like the way a town adds a new road that eventually everyone uses. Contracts come in that are bigger than my old boss's wildest boasts. And I watch Tyler Brooks at conferences, smiling the same empty smile Victor trained into him. And I realize that the system fosters the same people again and again. A dozen nods shaping the world into what those nods prefer. Years pass, and I keep my distance from the old place, seeing it only in the press and in the occasional LinkedIn update that lists another quarter of growth. Beneath the shiny headlines, the management is brittle. Corners cut for short-term numbers, vendors squeezed until elastic snaps. The watch is always in my pocket, and sometimes I stare at the crack and imagine tracing its hairline until it leads me to the thing I might do with the years I lost. The business grows, veteran clients praising our steady hands, new hires bringing fresh blood, and no tolerance for being dismissed as stuck. I make a point of mentoring people who would have been passed over, offering the promotions I was denied. I do it because it is right and because somewhere in the marrow I measure everything against the humiliation that began with Victor's words. Prosperity is a strange mirror. It flatters and it shows you scars you didn't see while you were hungry. I am careful with it. I do not gloat. I do not broadcast in a way that drinks another man's blood. I work. The watch ticks and keeps its small secret. That time, when kept close intended too, accrues in ways paychecks can't always show. When Victor's company starts to wobble publicly, poor quarterly results, a client who tweets about missing deliverables, a rumor about a botched acquisition, I pay attention like a man watching the first cracks in an ice pond. My board reads the same headlines and asks me to consider a modest partnership. I shake my head because the old office smells like a risk I no longer need. Then, 3 winners after the conference room, I get the call. Victor's voice on the other end is thin, the practiced authority gone airless. He keeps apologizing between the words, which is worse because apology is a currency, and he spends it like someone rehearsed at a mirror. "Ethan," he says, "we need help. I need your help. Will you consult? I'll pay anything." The second hand on my watch blinks under the frost of the window behind me, and for the first time in a long time I let my anger be a tool and not a shout. I say nothing for a long beat, counting the ticks, the small music of years lived. I tell him I'll think about it, and then I hang up. I put the phone down, and I feel something shift like a tectonic grace. The man who used to be defined by waiting no longer waits. He plans. I begin to constrict possibilities, to set a net not of malice, but of exacting consequence. I talk to my lawyers in quiet rooms, I review contracts from my past, and I listen to people who have watched Victor from a distance and accumulated stories like loose change. I do not act publicly. I build options and then watch the old company unwrap itself. Bad hires promoted for being malleable, contracts with thin margins, and a board that defers to a CEO who prefers optics over repair. I do not gloat when the missteps become misreports. I keep the watch in my pocket and I let the world make the errors that evidence will later show. I begin to poach clients the slow way, offering a better cadence, transparent billing, and a promise my company keeps. The clients leave not because I made them, but because the promises Victor's outfit made are empty and my phone is patient and persistent. At a holiday party, Victor bumps into me, our town's yearly networking event with string lights and overcooked ham, and he looks older in the slow way success can age a man, as if every smile cost him a ligament. He mentions, casually, that we should talk about consulting again. In his eyes I see a measure I learned to read early, the desperate one. I listen and I pretend to consider, and he smiles at the end with a smile that contains the same contempt he wore on the conference room day. I give him a time to call me in the week, which I know is a lie, the courtesy the first used to string him along for legal reasons. I collect a file of misstatements I find in a public ledger, and I send it, anonymized, to a few board members with a politely phrased note, asking whether anyone has seen the latest filings. Within days, an audit begins, and Victor's board is like a family that discovers a leak in the foundation. They panic and call him in with hard eyes. He phones me and begs again, his voice higher. "We need your eyes, Ethan, please." There is vulnerability in his plea that I want to smash like glass and then see more clearly inside. I prepare for the final act as a surgeon prepares for incision, not hurried, not vengeful in a cartoonish way, but precise. There is a trap, but it is not a trap of lies. It is a trap of truth. I arrange a meeting at the old conference room where it started, and I ask Victor's board to be present for a conversation about possible transition strategies. They come. Tyler sits where he once gloated, the same empty smile worn into a kind of bespoke expression. The board expects me to say I will save them the trouble. They expect the prodigal hand reaching down to pull the drowning out. Instead, I sit with the pocket watch on the table between us, the crack catching the overhead light like a small wand. I hand the watch to Victor across the table, watching his fingers tremble when he sees the engraving. I do not gloat. My voice is steady and surprisingly calm when I speak my line, the one I have repeated to myself in long motel rooms and behind the wheel while Maya slept in the passenger seat. You played time like it was currency, Victor. You spent other people's years and expected interest. He looks as if he might strike me. He opens his mouth and closes it. The room tastes of cheap coffee and the faint perfume of nervousness. I fold my hands and keep the face of a man who has done what he needed to do, not what he wanted to display. Then I do something that is almost cruel in its simplicity. I refuse. I won't consult, I say, and I won't take a fee. Your mess is yours. The shock on their faces is the misfiring element of a great play. Tyler's smile vanishes like a painted sign when the lights drop. I stand and I walk away with Maya waiting outside, where the winter air pinches our cheeks pink. Victor opens his mouth, protests, tries to bargain with me using words that sound like coin clinked against a table, promising reforms he will not execute. I keep walking. Outside, a photographer waits for the usual bites of story, the kind that grooms men into images for pages no one remembers. I let them have a photograph of Victor holding the watch, the engraving gleaming like accusation, while I step into my truck and start the engine. The company's collapse accelerates because the board is fractured, because accountability has a way of unfolding once reckoned with. Clients leave, lawsuits begin. The little cracks I watch grow in the canyons. Victor's fall is not theatrical. It is bureaucratic and public and perfectly mundane. An audit leads to an investigation. The board fires him in a meeting that they do not broadcast, and Tyler Brooks is left with a business card that no one wants to hold. I receive an email from Victor months later, a pleading thin as paper. Would I reconsider? Would I advise for a price? I print it out and set it on the mantle where the watch rests like an artifact. Maya asks me if I feel satisfied. I tell her satisfaction is a funny word. It makes you think of a meal finished, when really this feels like a house with fewer termites. I keep my face calm. I know scars don't always show outwardly. They live inside your ribs and your palms. I have paid for this in ways no press release can capture. Lost weekends, missed recitals, the learning curve of watching a child become a person who will one day need no protection from men like Victor. Yet, as I look at the watch now, the crack is just a line that marks where I was broken and where I hammered myself back whole. The poetic justice is simple. A man who once refused me now holds the very measure I carried of my fidelity. He is the one with the watch and the knowledge that he bought time with other people's labor, and I am the one who spent my years building something that will endure beyond his miscalculation. I leave him to count his losses and walk into an afternoon where the sun glows like a coin tipped on its side. I carry one lesson. No one owes you time, but you can turn the time you keep into something that doesn't allow others to spend it for you. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It helps us share more true stories like this.